So good morning. So I wanted to do a talk on the transforming landscape of Wi-Fi, how things are changing. And as always, other people have had similar talks. I think it's fantastic that we have so many common things that we want to talk about, and we have such a wealth of knowledge in the community. I just think that's awesome. So my plan was to talk about constant change, then go off and talk a little bit about AX, then a little bit about 6 gigahertz, and a little bit about WPA3. So how many of you are really excited to be working in wireless? Yeah. Everything that you know now, in about a year's time, will be history. All the access points. How many vendors we got? Vendors? Give us a wave. Your access points will be old access points in about a year's time, because we're going to have to start talking about 6 gigahertz. Okay? The promise of 6 gigahertz is wonderful. It's quiet, no microwave ovens, nobody else interfering with us. WPA3, our clients are going to have to support 6 gigahertz. And of course, AX. So how many people have an AX client? Can you have a show of hands? It's quite a lot. How many Samsungs? iPhones? Okay. All right, interesting mixed. So the first thing I want to talk about, I asked Dave a question about 10 minutes ago, Dave, and we got talking, and what was your comment? I learned something new today, every day. Learn something new every day. Right, yeah. I just thought it was fascinating that I was about to come and talk to this, and Dave says, I learn something new every day. We've got to keep on learning. You've got to do things like go to conferences. Well, I'm preaching to the choir here because you're already here, right? You've got to own this book. This is still one of the most awesome books that teaches the foundation of how Wi-Fi and things work, okay? Read some news sites and read blogs. How many people in the room blog? Can I have a show of hands? How many people blog? That's a lot of people who blog, okay? Didn't someone do a blog on all the blogs? Yeah, and that's great. One of the first things I learned is when you want to talk about something, you have to go and research it. And it's one of the best ways to learn something is to decide to talk about it. Because you know someone's going to ask you a difficult question, so you prepare and over-prepare. Okay. So I'm not going to do too much talking about AX. Francois and Roel did an absolutely fantastic job on this earlier. There's a link there that I put in. And I thought maybe I should mention, you all know about 802.11be. It's the new kid. I can see Dave. When are we going to get a talk on that, Dave? Anytime soon. So 802.11be. If you don't know about it, you heard it at WLPC Prague, right? Yeah. It's going to be here in 2020. I'm kidding, guys. I'm being sarcastic, right? But this is. How many of you had a customer say to you, "Yeah, I don't want to install AC. I'm waiting for AX to come out," or I don't want N. I'm waiting for AC, right? 802.11be is the new thing we're going to start talking about as soon as AX arrives, because that's the way this industry works. We never stop moving and learning, and there's something new. So how many of you have been in the industry more than 5 years? More than 10 years? More than 20 years? In a year's time, we'll all start learning about, well, we're starting to learn about it now, and we've been talking about AX for how long? I think you give a presentation, year and a half, yeah. Do you know much about 6 gig, Dave? Do you know when it's coming?
It's going to come fast in the United States, probably by 2020.
Cool, thank you. And we'll have a good talk about this, which of course everybody knows is broken, or is it? We'll talk about that, right? Okay, so AX, we know AX is coming. There's some talk. Where are we? So here's a couple of things we're talking about. Intel, hundreds of new PCs. This is information that have come out in the last week or so. Intel, hundreds of new PCs to be equipped with Wi-Fi 6 chips by the end of 2019. Okay. Qualcomm execs at Wi-Fi 6 launch event in San Francisco. There's a couple more I found. Specifically, you can see it's all from one website. Maybe we should do more than one website. I think this was Wi-Fi 6 in Dubai. And I think Wi-Fi 6 Stadium's gone live. Now, it's not bad, seeing as Wi-Fi 6 is still coming. Okay? This is all news that's come out in the last week or so, all about Wi-Fi 6. Okay. I'm not going to say too much about this. Philippe, I think, is going to talk about 6 gigahertz in Europe. Dave mentioned that we just talked about this. It's going to come, right? And it's going to be absolutely fantastic for the vendors and the client makers, because we've all got to buy new iPhones and Apples and Androids and Windows machines and things, because 6 gigahertz is new. Okay. The FCC have reiterated that this is quite scary. Why is he reiterated? We still getting it? That's kind of scary, right? Almost like maybe rumors we weren't getting it. So we'll see. Like Dave said, it'll appear quickly. Some of the talk has been about very low power, so it may. Where's Peter? Peter Kenzie? It'll make the CWP class a lot more fun, Pete, right? So lots more subjects to talk with. We have to add a couple of days onto that. Right? So the one consistency we have is change. Okay? And this is all stuff that's happened in the last week or so. Actually, this is older, sorry. This is a lot older. So we know AX is coming, we know 6 gigahertz is coming. So the only thing that I kind of had left that other people haven't talked about or aren't going to talk about is WPA3. So I thought I'd have a chat to you about WPA3 and maybe quell some of the rumors about WPA3. Okay? So I want to do some foundation stuff first to make sure we all understand what the problem is. The problem with Wi-Fi, of course, is how you connect to the network. We've got the four-way handshake. Anybody know the four-way handshake? Understand the four-way handshake? Yeah, nice and simple. Yeah. I'm sorry, am I working you all too hard this morning? Did you start to think you have a quiet morning? Get those exercises, yes. And of course, editor to 1x EPAN radius. So one of my favorites, I think I want to coin the term you used, the napkin diagrams, Keith. We all know it's real simple. Okay, you are unauthenticated, unassociate. You authenticate, you associate. You have three choices. Okay, you can use WPA2 personal, WPA2 enterprise, or you can use no security at all. If you use no security at all, you should never just leave it at that. You should always use some kind of captive portal. Okay, captive portal where it makes you sign in. Maybe like the hotel, just click a button, you get free Wi-Fi. You may usually have to do an acceptable use policy, enter your email, sign in somehow, or spend some money. Well, it's very important we understand that if you do this, there is no four-way handshake. If there's no four-way handshake, there's no encryption keys, right? So when you're sat in Starbucks on the free network, all your data is visible. So you all probably use a VPN, right? Yes? Yes, Phil? Or you use HTTPS or something similar. I have an entry on my blog that I put on there a while back, which is called Only with an S. When you're at Starbucks having a coffee, you only use protocols with an S in them. SFTP, HTTPS, and so on. So now you're fully connected. These are the only two ways you've got keys. And here, this is a problem because you're open. Okay? So part of the problem is there's only two ways you could use WPA2 enterprise, in which case you do an EAP radius exchange with a radius server, and you end up creating something called an MSK. The MSK is chopped in half, and it becomes a PMK, the pairwise master key. If you've done any reading up on fast transition, 802.11r or whatever, you know that's really important. Okay. The only other way you can do this is you can use a pre-shared key, WPA2 personal. You type in a password, secret, top secret, whatever. It mixes it 4,096 times with the SSID and creates the pre-shared key. The pre-shared key is then chopped in half and becomes a PMK. Now, if you look at this, you should notice something. Every time you log in, you get a new MSK if you use EAP radius. Every time you log in with a pre-shared key, you use the same pre-shared key, which means you generate the same PMK. Which means everybody on your network generates the same pre-shared key every time they log in, which means they all use the same PMK. But that's okay, right? Because should somebody leave the company I can't keep a straight face into this. Should somebody leave the company, you all change the pre-shed keys, right? Yeah. Of course you do, right? And you change them every, daily, Keith, right? Or every 30 days as a minimum. So let's do this as an internal hand up. Anybody have a pre-shed key that hasn't been changed for like a year or more? Don't put your hand up. Don't put your hand up, no. Proud of you, guys. Proud of you. So that's the problem with pre-shed keys. So somebody who's left your company can now sit in the car park and hear all your data. That's not good. Okay. And of course, good old-fashioned EAP radius, you have a supplicant that communicates via a authenticator, which is a wireless LAN controller and AP, or cloud and AP, however, whatever vendor you're using. But the important thing is that the EAP, this extensible authentication protocol, goes between the client and the radius server, okay? The authenticator just passes it through, okay? So maybe you know all this is all well and good, that's fantastic. Right. So WPA3 then, what do we need to know about WPA3? Well, there's a bit of maths you have to do, it's not too scary, don't worry. You have to know a little bit about Diffie Helman before you understand WPA3 and the promises of what WPA3 brings us. Okay, what does it give us? What does it do? It promises to fix a lot of the problems or the inherent issues we have with WPA2. So for example, good encryption at Starbucks, which is a good promise and a good thing. So we have to do a little Diffie Helman. And I don't like to use logarithmic maths. I think it's partially because I probably can't use them. I can explain them with paint. So there's an assumption you have to have here and you have to make here, okay? You have to understand that while we can see that that's yellow, that's red, and that's orange, it looks obvious, you have to understand that what we don't have is the shade. There are an infinite number of shades of color, okay? So we don't know exactly what shade of color of orange or blue this is. So between two entities over a public transport, and it's easy to mix colors, but you have to assume that it's expensive to separate colors, okay? So you can't reverse engineer this process, or you can, but it takes a large amount of processing power and a large amount of time or a large amount of cost. So Alice and Bob, who are always doing this stuff, Alice and Bob choose a common color, they choose a flavor of yellow. They choose a secret color that they never ever share with anybody. They mix the common color with their secret color to end up with another color, a color, okay? They transmit this mixed color across an open network that's in public domain, okay? And they then mix the colors they get from each other with their secret color. And they both end up with the same awful color brown, okay? I was going to say something else then, but I cleaned that up for the folks at home. So they both end up with the same color of yucky brown, okay? Now this is very important because Alice and Bob now have a method, a common encryption key that they can use that was created across an open public network. That deserves a round of applause. Thank you, Mr. Helman. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, guys. So Diffie Helman is based on finite field discrete logarithms, basically x to the power of y modulo p, and that's all the math I'm going to show you. Okay, it's important to understand that it does not give authentication. Okay, Alice and Bob have created a common secret they can communicate with each other in, but Alice and Bob don't know who's on the other end of the phone. Alice doesn't know it's Bob, and Bob doesn't know it's Alice. They just have a secret way of communicating. That's really important to understand, okay? It creates a keyed one-way function. It takes two inputs, produces one output, and one of the outputs is private, for example, the key. You have to understand and accept the premise that it is computationally infeasible, okay, to get the exact shade of the billions of colors of paint that they've used. This is where the paint analogy falls down. Everyone's like, well, it's yellow and orange, dude. It's not hard to know that yellow and red make orange. But it's the exact shading in the color charts of orange that's the key secret here. So Diffie Helman is fantastic, but they wanted something even more complex, and they came up with the idea of elliptic curves, okay? So given a graph, you can see a point on the graph. And I'm going to simplify this a lot. Given a point, you don't know which graph created that point. Does that make sense? And that's the only maths I'm going to give you about elliptic curve mathematics. So ECDH, elliptic curve Diffie Helman, just please understand it's better, it's more secure than Diffie Helman, but it's much, much, much harder to reverse engineer the calculation. Okay? So Diffie Helman is used for encryption, ECDSA is used for digital signing. Okay. So with all that said, 802.11s protocol gave us the concept of simultaneous authentication of equals. The idea was that they wanted two mesh access points to be able to connect to each other securely, so Diffie Helman was a classic solution for this. So you can either use classic finite field Diffie Helman or elliptic curve Diffie Helman. Okay. Now this is an old slide set, and it says it's considering it became the replacement for WPA personal pre-shared key, an option I should say, not a replacement. Okay. It doesn't give us any authentication. Simultaneous authentication of equals is a way where two stations can create an encryption key between themselves and share data, but you don't know. So you go to Starbucks and you have an encryption key, but you don't know if it's a hacker running his or her AP instead of Starbucks. Okay, it's not authenticated, but it's very, very secure. Okay. Of course, you all know about the problems. So it's based on Dragonfly, and you all know about Dragonblood that I'll talk about in a minute. So essentially what you have is instead of an authentication, you run an SAE authentication, which does a two-way exchange of a commit, a two-way exchange of a confirm, and then you have a pairwise master key. The pre-shared key is still, or can still be used, but that gives you authentication. So because Alice got a pre-shared key and Bob's got a pre-shared key, the fact they have the same key, they assume, Alice and Bob assume it is each other. But the pre-shared key has nothing at all to do with the PMK generation anymore. So this is a unique exchange between Alice and Bob, or between the client and the AP, where they've generated a PMK that's got nothing to do with the pre-shared key. So this means in Starbucks, you can generate a key, and even if I capture your four-way handshake, I cannot break your network. Because if I spend lots of compute resources breaking your PMK, I've broken your PMK. Okay? If I want to look at other data, I've got to break your PMK and your PMK and your PMK and your PMK. So it's not the way it was before, where when you break the PMK of a pre-shared key network, you own the network. And even if you capture this exchange, because it's based on the Diffie Helman concept, I cannot easily calculate your PMK. So the only way I can attack your PMK without shortcuts is a brute force attack, which takes a lot of compute resources. And hackers, don't usually spend lots of resources trying to break one person's PMK. No one's going to let a machine run for 6 months to break one person's PMK, where when they walked out of the coffee shop, walked back in 10 minutes later, they get a new PMK, right? So it really solves the problem of A, pre-shared key is very, very easy to break, and B, when you're at Starbucks, you aren't using any encryption whatsoever. So now you associate as normal, and you run the four-way handshake, and the pairwise transient key is calculated from the PMK, but the PMK was gotten from the Diffie Helman exchange. So this gives us all sorts of wonderful things. Okay, I just talked about this, so I'll jump this. It gives us all sorts of wonderful things. Okay. First of all, WPA 2 is going to be updated to operate more with protected management frames, enhanced vendor security, and of course we're up in the security, the bit level of the security as well. WPA3 then is going to be the next generation. Ideally, it's going to simplify and enhance Wi-Fi security. So your mom and your grandma are going to go down Starbucks with their iPad and their iPhone. They're going to connect, and they don't have to do anything to use WPA3. They just connect like they did with WPA2. They just connect to the network, and they get better encryption. So it's encryption. I don't say encryption is for dummy, because my mom will hit me if I say that. It's encryption for people who aren't security experts. How's that? And we don't expect our customers and our moms and our grandmas and our granddads to be security experts. So this is perfect because they use their systems like they've always used them, and they get really good security. Okay? So the other couple of things we're going to do is we're going to disallow TKIP, which we probably shouldn't be using anyway, and it's going to mandate the use of PMF. Of course, there's going to be a transition time where they're not going to make everybody do WPA3. They're going to have backwards compatibility with WPA2, where they will allow you to run WPA3 and WPA2 in the same network. And if you've ever done the CWSP class, if you run 802.1x EAP authentication and WEP, your security level is WEP. Okay? The fact that you run 802.1x on another part of your network is completely irrelevant. Okay, so until we get rid of transition mode and only run WPA3, which may be sooner than we think, because the problems that have come up with WPA3. I mentioned transition mode, okay, so they will run on the same SSID and use the same PSK. So if you have WPA3, you'll use the enhancement, but you won't kick anybody off that's using WPA2. So more protection for users regardless of their password complexity. This is very interesting. Easier, secure onboarding of an IoT system. How are you going to, do you need to plug in a keyboard and a monitor into an IoT system to be able to onboard it? No, because you may have tens of thousands of them. Okay? Thousands of them you don't want to do that with. So anything that can help with the onboarding of IoT systems is going to be good. And generally, a higher level of protection in open networks. So better security is what we were promised. Okay? WPA3 personnel now become resistant to offline dictionary attacks, and anybody that's at the boot camp or the deep dive on the Kali Linux. One of the things that I told them and I promised them on the first day, it's not hard. And who sat the deep dive? Okay? And you all managed to break WPA2, right? An 8-character, very simple passphrase, we all broke it in class. And it wasn't hard, right? Because when I told you the scripted tool that you'd sit there, grandma could do it, remember? So anything that we can do to stop dictionary attacks will help us. Stronger protection against password guessing. And this is, of course, is the real problem, okay? Protection for muggles, people who use easy passwords like Candy123 or ABCDEFGH or something. Provide forward secrecy. So if I break your PMK or if I get your pre-shared key at some time in the future, I still can't go back in time and break your data that you've exchanged. So you can be safe that your data you've exchanged is secure, even if at some time in the future your pre-shared key is compromised. And most important of all, invisible to users. Okay? So pre-shared key will now just be for authentication. SAE will ideally replace the pre-shared key for the encryption. As we saw, SAE will negotiate the PMK, then run the four-way handshake, and ideally it's going to be resilient to passive and active attacks. And it's resistant to offline dictionary attacks, which makes our life a lot better. Okay, I'm going to speed up a little bit here. WPA Enterprise, how many people use WPA2 Enterprise? Right? Lots of people, fantastic. It's still the best way to do it, over pre-shared key. WPA3 Enterprise is going to make it so you can't disable PMF, stronger encryption keys, and it's going to be invisible to users. So if you're using WPA2 Enterprise, you can transition to WPA3 Enterprise very quickly. Okay? So there's some of the good stuff we come in with WPA3 Enterprise. I'm speeding up. A couple of other things. Wi-Fi enhanced open, opportunistic, wireless encryption. Fantastic. So you can turn it on in Starbucks, and people in Starbucks will get better security whether they want it or not. Okay? Again, remember, no authentication. Your data at Starbucks is encrypted, but you don't know if you were talking to the Starbucks place or not. Okay. I talked about AX. AX is going to come with WPA3. Vendors are talking about WPA3. Vendors, just a wave. You're doing WPA3?
Requirement for Wi-Fi 6.
Good point. And it's out already, working. Yeah. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the Samsung S10 and the iPhone iOS 13 will do WPA3. So we have devices to test it.
They do.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Some references. Okay. Well, last thing to talk about then, WPA3 is dead, right? Or is it? Maybe, maybe not. So I highly recommend this. I go and hang out at DEF CON. So there's Black Hat and DEF CON. Black Hat is a little bit more expensive. DEF CON is like a couple of $100. And you go and hang out with people, and this year I went to some amazing talks. And all the hackers were like, well, no, WPA3, it's not, why is it dead? Okay? If you look at there are problems with it, yes. Each vendor has come up with their own solutions to it. But the main problems with it is you can downgrade a WPA3 transition mode. Well, anybody got a wild idea how to fix that? Turn off transition mode. Fixed it, all right? Okay. And so everybody's up in arms about WPA3 is problem. So let's just time out for a minute. So because you know your local Starbucks is using WPA3, you're all going to not bother turning your VPNs on at Starbucks anymore. No. So does it matter? WPA3 is broken, and if you use transition mode, you're going to end up with WPA2 level security, which is what you had at your coffee shop anyway, which is why we all use VPNs, right? So I'm not trying to play down the problems with WPA3, but they're not as bad. It's not the end of the world for WPA3. Okay. You've also got timing side attacks, cache attacks, and resource consumption. One of the things that hackers tend to do, if they can't break it, they'll just stop it working with a denial of service attack. Okay. So I do a lot of work with Cisco, so I'm going to talk about their response to this. And they came out with a PDF that basically says, so WPA3 is vulnerable. WPA3, so did I say WPA, what did I say? Did I say poo? Sorry. WPA3, okay? It's vulnerable, what I said, okay? And what Cisco have said is you can put an access control list on the CPU, and then the denial of service stuff doesn't work anymore. Okay? Turn off WPA3 transition mode, and most of the scary stuff goes away. So here's the main issues, and here's Cisco's response. I'm assuming you guys got a response as well, Dave? You got something similar? Everyone has, right? Hey, here's the problem, here's our solution to it. So WPA3 isn't dead, it's fixable, okay? And I did put, for anyone who said I put that was the link, which I thought no one would ever be able to write down in the 10 seconds that I showed the slide for. So I created that there. You can just go to that link, and it takes you over there. So maybe WPA3 isn't as dead as we thought it was. So maybe there's a bit of life in it yet. And that's me done. 2 minutes spare. Thank you very much.